And also, that's one to our attendees as well. I think that you will also be interested in this discussion. Must be different that also learning so that we are all able to gain an insight from our panelists of what is actually happening in South Africa regarding how to implement and regarding the capability to deploy like is in government and also regarding supply chain management systems. So that being said, I welcome you to our at the Genesis Business School. So it's just a short description of who we are at the Genesis. So the Genesis is a renowned institution in South Africa with a wide range of education firms with a strong focus on practical application in the ways so that we can be also learning to our students. And these webinar that we are having today, and finally to bring in the form of practical learning will bring in industry people who know a bit more about this topic and have expanded to be sharing their experiences of subject matter. So with that being said, introduce yourselves if you can manage this one and just turn on your camera and mic and just tell us more about this. Okay, good morning, Kanisha, and good morning, colleagues in the platform. Good afternoon. I establishing operation. I'm responsible for supply chain management. My background has always been on supply chain management environment for a few. Supply chain. That was before the formulation of the now called I think Nigeria's currently having some technical issues. Just for so I just also just I think the network is a bit slow this time. Can you see me? Okay, thank you very much. This is someone else. I am from the Central District using strategic supply chain management. And I contract management and performance strategy, as well as the supplier management, as well as marketing and business. So we help now for prior to the local government or public sector procurement lectures now. At the same time, part of this process to talk about procurement, and I'm very passionate about. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about this topic. What's it? Yes, honorable management and asset management at the housing financial legislation. I just to be clear, but I think that we will on this just 5 years. It's not what's called until it is, but it is today. Warranted with even as the public procurement. It's not a bill. It's approved to waiting for the regulations and the date of application. It's going to be very interesting to just listen to understanding behind this benefits or disadvantages that you will bring with its implementation. As I indicated, I've been in the public service for the past 25 years. This month I will be celebrating my 25 years. I've been mostly in national. I just joined the legislative sector 3 years ago. So the legislative sector in all the elements of supply chain management, processes, and administration of this quality, also custom lecture as well. So this is a passion of mine. If I would tell people that I actually did not study, I stumbled on this. It started on September, and 25 years later, I am looking forward to the thanks again for hosting us and collecting us from the corners that we are to say let's come and talk. Let's say this is in the thank you very much, Marcelo. And we're looking forward to hearing more about your input on the business process in government with regards to public procurement. Colleagues, are you with us? Colette, hopefully I pronounced it properly. Colette. Okay. Then can you just give us a brief description about who you are and your work in the industry? Sure. supplier management, procurement also for supplier development. I'm just letting it. I worked in transit. I worked in different industries, and I don't think that's relevant today, but what's important is looking forward to hearing from you and just also to have more information about what's happening in transit and ESCOM. We need answers there. And we need did I get anyone else? Afternoon, can you stop and my name is Lisa. Just call how what I texted the last but my experience actually in corporate management, so I've left for different and I work for Translate as well. So I'm currently here at Cisco and moving around here. Already said that we are busy, we're busy unpacking and the video and like so we're all excited and I'm looking forward to the session and for transparency. So thanks. Anyone out? Nadia, were you able to thank you, Nadia. The mic is just not on. Yes, we can. So under my supply chain management, supply chain management. The third is financial systems that people need, the systems because of procurement terms. And the provincial trade of 30 municipalities, 30 provincial policies, and 30 departments. So I don't basically mean if you don't understand this, oversight, that relates to financial management in the province as it relates to procurement, but also the trade and capacity build in terms of the functions. And I know how to in, so born there, and I was a practicing attorney, so I was able to contracts with attorney yeah, but also I'm very passionate about supply chain management and fleet governance, and I'm passionate about services and meeting the needs of our citizens. And as a technician, it was actually a thing I want to be careful and that needs to deliver on the service delivery. So yeah, I'm excited. But I'm very particular with my classic students of it. So thank you very much. That's awesome. Yes. How are you, Nagin? I'm good. See the thing Thank you very much. Thank you to all panelists for such it's really to the attendees questions based on what the city and where they are coming from. So we are going to have a robust discussion and everybody asking questions is public procurement. How does public procurement affect citizens of South Africa and what about it? So Nadia, Nadia, are you here? Yes. I'm just coming. No understanding because we've been hearing a lot more about people who come from you. So can you just give us your input about that's no occasion place on record. We're not necessarily pertinent issues in the community. Engaging at every commentary from this community. We've actually given a very comprehensive how the features of the world which is structured that we see not only regulations with supply chain management. And part of that is when we look at preferential procurement, is about looking at how that framework is implemented. Because we then implement that in the manufacturing critical aspects of that we are opposed to. That was assented to is not actually the version that was consulted, at the NCOP level or at the, the prior tabling of the that you focus on. It has to be in terms of section 2172, and the three says the framework must actually tell you then how then to go about doing it. So there are those pertinent issues that we're looking at. And then obviously the other main area that concerns us is the complaints mechanism. There's, I don't want to go into the legalities because it becomes very technical when you go into there's two principles when you're agreeing to issue legislation. One is what we call the golden principle of governance, where you're actually looking at an outcome, of some celebrity of how you want your legislation to actually unfold. And the other is what we call the mischief rule. Now, the mischief rule works when you. Okay, let's use that. And this entire rule is written on the premise of corruption. And for us, that becomes very limiting for especially provinces that may have a level of maturity in terms of dealing with supply chain. I think there's an echo. So for us, I think that nuance, and we're seeing how then do you it's like creating these additional governance structures to evade a corrupt environment and in a way putting in more mechanism on top of what they already exists because of the fact it failed, and not for the fact that the law failed, but for the fact that people failed.
people became corrupt and people didn't apply the law, and there has not been accountability for that. And so I think those are basically the main pertinent issues that I think the Western Cape is concerned with. Whilst there are other areas that we absolutely on board, and we welcome those requirements, and I think I've just mentioned those that are of concern to us and where the opposition's coming from. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Nadia. Can I just kind of bring in Matepo in this discussion, because Matepo, when you were talking about the act, as you were introducing yourself, you had so much hope about what the act would be bringing to us as South Africans in a manner of transparency, with the new act that's coming in, and the legalities, and there's some scare that's coming from Nadia. Maybe you can just bring in that form of hopeness that you were speaking about in the beginning regarding the Procurement Act and what it means to ordinary citizens like us. Can you just kind of unmute yourself? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think Nadia has covered it very well. But I think from my side, from the legislative sector, and especially because there's only a little section that talks to the legislative sector, that is your provincial legislatures and parliament. Given that we have our own, we're not governed by the PFMA. We've got our own act, which is the Financial Management for Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act. We call it FAMPLA, which is a bit different from what FAMPLA, PFMA prescribe, just a bit different. However, the manner in which things are done in the legislature, procurement-wise, budgeting-wise, it's also following a bit of a different process. So we're looking at this and we're saying, if only we are referred to or provided for in only that section 4 of the act, how is the legislatures going to implement this act? And will it apply to legislatures and parliament, or will still the parliament and legislatures operate on their own act? Given the fact that some of the provisions that are made in the FAMPLA are from the triple PFA. So when, as it would be known, when the act becomes operational, the triple PFA will fall off. Your Preferential Public Procurement Framework Act, it's going to fall off, which means there's certain provisions that will no longer be applicable in terms of that act in our legislature. So there's a bit of uncertainty in terms of the way in which the legislatures are going to participate in this, and making sure that we all become I think for me, I was looking for uniformity, if I may put it that way, across all sectors, be it the municipals or legislatures, whichever way, provincial way. My hope was that the act is going to cover that basis, given that we were operating under different structures. One can argue to say supply chain management principles are the same. I agree. However, it depends on where you apply certain principles that makes a difference. So uniformity would have assisted us. Nadia also referred to the modernization in her introduction. This has been long going. Now, with the Act making provision for the accounting officers to look at, and it doesn't prescribe how the structures should be done, but there is a, Nadia, you need to help me here. Is it an implied provision to say supply chain management units would not necessarily be under the the chief financial officer or would be reporting to the accounting officer. So there's that, that gray line that is.
It's like an uncertainty at the moment.
Yes.
Look, I think if you take the national, the PPO office, for example, they've actually put that as almost a separate entity on its own. So you're uncertain until the regulations have been issued. Where does the PPO sit under the National Treasury? Firstly. And so is it sitting under the normal functions of what would be in Chapter 13 of the Constitution, and what Section 216 gives them the power to do in terms of revenue, expenditure, assets, and liabilities, for example. And then that cascades down into where they're seeing provincial treasuries being and where that function would be. So, for example, my office would be an equivalent of the PPO office at national, but at provincial level. But where do I fit into the provincial treasury? And then how does that then translate into the CFO's office? It's very uncertain because it's not clear in the act itself. Because if you're taking the whole, and I think the view is you're taking procurement as a function separate from the financial construct, which would have been in the PFMA, because offices of the CFOs had financial accounting, management accounting, risk management, internal control, and supply chain management and asset management. Now, if you take supply chain out, does that mean asset management will also come out of it? And then you're just left with the pure financials and financial statements and budgeting, etc. So, I mean, are you going to create supply chain units on their own? And what would then, and that's another big concern for us, because we see the disconnect from financial functions as a very critical aspect of financial prudence, financial management, and then linking back to your financial and budgeting principles that add to delivery. So for us, we've worked very hard in our own SCM reform process to link things like procurement planning to the budget process. So now we're entering our MTech. We will be looking at procurement planning, cost containment, how you would be looking at fiscal consolidation, etc., within a procurement space, and looking at value for money and delivering, things like how do you do more with less, those kind of things that are budget principled and driven through financial management regime. Now with the act coming in, you're going to sit on an island on your own, and you don't know how those reporting and integrated work plans will then flow and realize itself in practice. And for us, that's a big concern, because it does mean, for us, we've achieved a lot. I mean, even with the current preferential procurement and BEE Act, I mean, I have stats that, we get the feedback, that you can't measure what you did and it didn't have value. I can show you stats in our province. I mean, our supplier database is at this point, 73 or up, and it fluctuates because people register and get off and come on. But in any given time, we've between 70 to 80% of our contracts via direct procurement go to Black-owned companies. 86% goes to SMEs. With our overall, and I'm giving you stats for last year's expenditure. So which means that all of that work that we did in implementing preferential procurement and enabling Black-owned companies in the manner that we sought, without looking at set-asides or targeting in a particular way, will go out the window, because the current framework is very specific and narrow, because it prescribes how you must do that. And some of those things are not a reality in every province is not the same. Some province may have a strong rural grouping that they need to empower and bring to the table. Others may have different dynamics. And so you need to then give provinces that opportunity, because we often talk in the Western Cape about an evidence-led approach. So you need to know what you're purchasing, you need to know why you're purchasing and for whom and from whom. And once you get that context, then you can plan better. And, we often say, and I use this line, the law must always be rational, reasonable, practical, and economically viable. If it doesn't meet those principles, then you're paying a lot of premium to actually then give effect to the things.
Yeah.
So before it actually,
Cover that.
yes, we need to, it's our responsibility to make sure that, you know what, it's right. And I think for me, I'm very for the Procurement Act, but I think we're rushing it. I think we need a lot more time. There's a lot of good things that came through in the consultation process. And I think a lot of sectors and spheres, even in the private sector, were saying a lot of things that we have not heeded in the final version. And so for us, I think if we could get to the space as the Western Cape to say, have this discussion with us, let's consult. We have the ability in our province to show you or give you guidance or help you with adjusting this thing and correcting it and doing it right. Give us that opportunity to do that. And I think collectively, we've got the will and the way in the entire country to do that. Because different provinces and different stakeholders bring different things to the table. That could add immense value.
Can
And
I
I think
just,
that's, sorry, I'm monopolizing.
yes. I see that you're very, very passionate about the topic. But Western Cape is just one province that has been doing very, very well with regards to procurement. We've still had provinces that are facing so many challenges with regards to that. And if possible, I just want to bring in who just joined us, Andres Lowe. The challenges with regards to procurement that we faced in the Eastern Cape, and also if maybe David can also just elaborate on the difficulties that Eastern Cape Province and specifically Buffalo City that has had problems with the current procurement system. Okay,
Good afternoon.
Oh, yes, and Andres?
It's Andres here. Let me just switch on my video for a second so you can see the outline of my head. Because I've got a bit of a background light going here, so I'm not entirely sure how things are looking.
Looking very bad, Andres.
Anyway, so many of you know how I look, so that's not so important. I'm not a big user of Zoom, so I tend to press the wrong buttons. Anyway, now just to quickly mention on the Eastern Cape side, yeah, I think one of the big challenges we have is there's let's say this is a deep rural province. You can't really compare us to the likes of Joburg or Cape Town or even Durban. I mean, although let's rather mention the provinces, the Western Cape. KZN is deep rural as well, but it at least has a couple of strong economic hubs. And then Gauteng is obviously almost one big city. But so your market and your dynamic differ significantly. And I do believe, and I've just that's one of the reasons why I'm late. I was running around. We had a session this morning with National Treasury on the implementation of the Procurement Act, and they sort of outlined what it's all about and so on. And it does seem like it's going to throw a spanner in the works again, in the sense of a lot of things change. What we're not familiar with is going to change. But I don't want to talk about that. I think that process is going to it will come with its own timeframes. But the reason I mention it is because I want to specifically mention that they specifically mention that the new act intends to improve the empowerment or the redress element of the procurement process that hasn't gone the way it's supposed to. And they say the BBBE Act has not really materially impacted the environment the way it was intended to. So this act is now supposed to make a difference. But the reality is, it is this ongoing attempt to create local economic development, which ultimately complicates procurement processes to the point where they actually end up failing, where they actually end up being so complex, we don't know how to evaluate it. We end up paying massive premiums. And the thing that gets lost in the equation is service delivery. Because at the end of the day, if our procurement processes fail, our procurement system ends up underperforming and failing. And I think that's the reality. Yes, there's a skills element to it as well. The skills element is that historically the procurement functions in many organizations was considered the dumping ground for people they don't know what to do with. It's considered an admin function, which is absolute nonsense. I've been fortunate enough to be one of the initial employees of Neotel, which is now Liquid Telecoms, and we worked with guys from the Tata Group, one of the subsidiaries called VSNL. And in India, the procurement specialists and professionals are engineers with MBA degrees. These people aren't lightly educated. And I think we tend to have our procurement environment very much dominated by people that is not from a professional cadre. And you'll probably find that the provinces that's performing better is because they've got more professional teams. Obviously, in the Eastern Cape, we've been pushing to professionalize the environment for years now. And I think it's early days, but we start seeing certain improvements. I think the area that's an absolute disaster is construction management or the infrastructure side. But there's other dynamics again involved that I don't think we want to focus on. I sort of understood this session to be more progressive and talk about what can we do more, and if the opportunity presents itself later on, I would like to throw in a couple of ideas at everybody. The information I share is always free, and I'm willing to share all that. But we'll take that then. I think that's my first bite, just to say that the complexity of the environment is ultimately not appreciated or really understood. It's the old case of you don't know what you don't know. So
Thank you.
Let's stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Then let me try to bring in David as well, who was also from the Eastern Cape. Can you just highlight the biggest challenges that you've had within your municipality regarding procurement?
Oh, thanks, man. Before I get to that, I think I would want just to air my views with regards to the act and what my colleagues have raised. I can't agree more with the colleague from Cape Town, from Western Cape, around the basis that the act is founded on. That is founded on to deal with corruption. So and that I find that disturbing. And that is disturbing. And unfortunately, if you're in the procurement or supply chain environment, when people hear or see you, they always put a stigma onto you that you are one of the corrupt, which is unfortunate. But that's part of, and someone has got to do it, and someone's got to be part of that. But more to add more on that, for me, both MFMA and the PFMA, one of the biggest challenges I've personally had with it, especially in my years working in the trading entities, where you need to compete with the private sector out there, that it was stifling that the decisions that you easily take in the private sector with no cumbersome process to follow, you find that it's difficult to compete in that space. Yet you are expected to compete and be competitive, whether by price or whatever in that space. So I was hoping that whatever it will come, it will try and address that so that it can ease the burden on the trading entities. But I find it's not doing that, which is for me, for big business corporates like Transnet and Eskom, this is not helping them, because we want them to thrive, for the economy to thrive. the coming to what Andres has said is that, you know, if you go in many organizations, is that when the whole idea of procurement and supply chain came about, it was regarded as doors. And you find that the skill set of the people that then when this evolved, but it evolved with the people that didn't have or possess the political skills to be able to deliver on this. Hence, it's a big challenge. But coming down to the area where I focus on, that supply chain, most of the time, or in most entities, that people view it as a last, or think about it as a last resort. Yet, you ought to, even from the planning stage, have that how do you bring or rope in supply chain so that you are able to make sure that your procurement strategy is aligned and everyone is in sync to guide the process, so that by the time you need to procure, everything else is in line. Hence, then you find that it's got an impact mainly on service delivery, as an impact on the timeless delivery and the product that is going to come out of that process. Why? Because it was brought in late. So the timing and proper planning of how projects should be done and roping in all the stakeholders is still a key challenge across that I can put in. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And you also speaking about state-owned enterprises having difficulties with regards to procurement and supply chain management. I would like to rope in Ms. Yende. What supply chain issues have you experienced with regards to your Gibela and Transnet? What issues have you faced recently with regards to supply chain management system in your sector? Can you kindly just unmute yourself?
I was not sure I'm unmuted. So thanks. I'm saying before I even tackle that question, earlier on you had just wanted to know, I think, about the purposes of really what are the benefits of public procurement per se. Yes. And I want to start by saying the existence of Gibela is because of public procurement. In itself, as a company, then I'll come to other things. Gibela is a supplier to PRASA, which is a state-owned entity. And had it not been that public procurement being done, today, Gibela employs about 1,300 employees, people. That's the first thing. And within Gibela, we've got about, give or take, about 70 plus suppliers. And of those suppliers that we have, we are at the moment sitting at, in terms of local content, I'm not even talking suppliers. We are currently sitting at about, from a material, I'm talking direct procurement. I'm not adding the labor. We're currently sitting at 61%. And I know we headed to 65, et cetera, et cetera. And then looking at that, and I'll then say, from an SMME perspective, we have a whole lot of suppliers that we have developed. Today, as I'm talking to you, one of my colleagues is talking about the successes of Gibela. And the successes of Gibela are the successes as a result of public procurement. Because had it not been that, we would not be talking about the EMUs that people are now using called Istimela Sabantu. So in as much as I may then say, looking at where I was in Transnet, the type of work that we did, including the development that we did, that public procurement and the systems that we had, you see the difference between working in a public sector. And I say that because I think the public sector has the best processes, has the best policies, as opposed to, I'm not talking about Gibela right now, as opposed to the public sector. I've worked in the public sector and it was a shock. And one of my colleagues here said what Transnet did and I give credit to Transnet actually. And not only Transnet, my stint at Eskom, I think, was about 4 years. Even then, had I not done what I did then, I would not have been where I was and. So what I believe is the best benefit of public procurement is that it is transparent. And in its transparency, it is empowering. Most suppliers and most people get to benefit from it. And if I look at the policies that come from that, I'm not going to talk about the bill. I'll allow my other colleagues to focus on the bill itself. And if I look at then the systems and the processes that we have, we all take from the government processes and policies, and then we craft our own. And we do that because the big focus here is to enable, is to allow the economy to grow, is to allow the participation. And what I like perhaps about where I am is that, and what I do today, is that when I look at the train and I look at the companies that unfortunately are sole suppliers of Gibela, having been developed by us, they have an opportunity post these trains to export. In fact, we have a number of suppliers today that are now exporting as a result of the public funding or the public procurement that PRASA did and that Gibela is now spending. And I'm saying this because the only customer Gibela has is PRASA.
Yes.
So whether I like it or not, that is still public procurement.
So as we are waiting for our railways to go back to where they were before COVID, we are looking on to you. When there are issues regarding that, we must come and speak to you.
Of course, because and you know, we are not only focusing at the moment, yes, the contract is focusing on building of the trains, but internally we're also looking at, this is our country. And how can we assist and support PRASA in modernizing the infrastructure?
Okay, let me try to capture you there while I give other colleagues to come back. But speaking of modernization and sticking to our state-owned enterprises, I would like to bring in Eskom into the conversation. And I say this because we are now looking into Obisa, if you can just kindly join us. We are looking into the aspect now of renewable energy that is coming into, which is a part of discussion in South Africa. And a lot of people fear this because it's linked to Eskom. You know, Eskom has had its own challenges with regards to procurement. So how sure are we that with regards to these new systems of renewable energy, if they were to be enacted and coming into our South African community? I know some of them they are already there, but how sure are we that there will be some form of transparency and competitiveness and a level platform for everyone to participate in the procurement procedures there?
Okay, I think first and foremost, I'm talking from the perspective of being a state-owned enterprise. That translates to us holding the public purse, meaning that we have to be accountable. We have to be transparent in our processes. We don't have a choice. Actually, it's given. And I was reviewing actually our procedure yesterday, and my findings was that about 95% of our procedure actually just speaks to compliance, and while to legislation, while 5% is just only speak to our internal controls. Now, as Eskom, it goes without saying that we subscribe, you know, to our constitution of fair, openness and transparency. So what we are doing differently, you know, without changing. I hear my colleagues actually raising some concern about the practical application of the new act, and what we have learned from our side is that yes, probably when when the act is passed and when National Treasury puts in this legislation, they just assume that is one size fits all. But with the engagement, that interactive engagement that you can have with them, they've got an open door policy when you can get some exemptions. I mean, you know that we're coming from a dark period of load shedding, and for us to be where we are today, we had to have those engagements where we could get some relaxation, in terms of some of the regulations and legislation. Now, what you are doing differently at this time, again, is part of the learnings from the period that you are coming from, is that most of the work needs to happen pre-procurement. And I think that's what in most organizations you are really not doing well in terms of upfront planning. We have to do a lot of activities pre-procurement. What does that mean? You need to get your market ready. If your market is not there, you have to create the market. You have to be very intentional when it comes to your supplier development strategies, so that you can take the market along with you. So what we are doing with our plans, and you will know that we do hold our public engagement forums where we communicate our plan to promote a transparency and also to promote access to information so that the market can prepare itself to say, this is what is coming. If suppliers need to invest now so that they can transit to this new way actually of doing, to these opportunities, we give them ample time actually to be able to do. So a lot of work needs to happen, that is pre-procurement activities. And also, as I said, that our rules, we're not going to do, there's nothing new that we're going to do when it comes to our procurement policies and procedures. They are there, they are clear. And the only thing that we need to drive from our side is that we drive compliance. Hence, for us, we are excited actually when it comes to the act, because it's going to force that accountability to say, for everything that you do, you've got an oversight. Someone is going to come in and say, are you complying, and why this decision was made? I know it's going to be a very tedious process, but we are a state-owned entity. We need to account to the public. Having said that, the interactions that we're having with National Treasury is to make sure that there is that optimal balance, so that we are able at the same time to respond faster, to our business needs. But in a nutshell, pre-procurement activities is what we are really being intentional at this point in time. And secondly, we are very decisive when it comes to supplier development. We are busy rolling out now programs actually that will create the market, so that by the time you go out to the market, it is there. People are able to participate to those markets. But procedure-wise, openness and fairness, nothing is going to change there. We will subscribe to the current legislation. Thanks.
Okay. Let's be hopeful. Kululego, can I just kindly rope you in here and just try to find out from your department, how do you guys promote supplier diversity and in ensuring that a variety of businesses have the platform to participate in your procurement processes?
Okay, thank you very much, Kanyeso, and interesting inputs from the colleagues on the platform. Before I come to your question, I'm tempted to just comment on my views regarding the act. Of course, coming from the Department of International Relations, most of our procurement is for missions, our missions abroad, so it's informed by what goes on abroad. So we get exemption from National Treasury for procurement that takes place abroad, because all the transformational imperatives of South Africa are not applicable. But with me being a procurement practitioner in South Africa, looking at the act, I'm looking at it in a very positive light. comparing to where we come from, evolution of procurement, now supply chain management, generally called. The Act, for me, of course, there's still going to be a lot of deliberations on the regulations, and Treasury is now on a roadshow for all sectors to make inputs. And what I like is that all these inputs will be coming from now, because there's a consolidated approach to the Act, because the Act now is bringing together all the sectors, local government, every sector of the public. So I think the inputs that are gonna come are gonna enrich the regulations to cover everybody. And I think there will be valuable inputs from this sector. So I think it's a positive thing. I picked up that there is an intention to create a tribunal, because we cannot run away from the fact that procurement in the public service has created a lot of problems in terms of public funds not being managed properly. So we need an oversight. In South Africa, in all the sectors, you need oversight. You cannot run away from this fact. So the way they thought about the tribunal and how it's going to work, I think it's going to assist a lot. On the issues of transformation, for me, I think what has come up, it has not necessarily changed the intention of what was there in all the acts that were there before in procurement. I think what it tries to do is to create a platform for an impact, to make an impact in ensuring that transformation through procurement happens effectively, because it has to happen. It's never going to be a straightforward issue to say, how do you promote local business? How do you promote township economy? How do you contribute to that? It's not going to be straightforward, but there must be an effort. And a Public Procurement Act is one of those. So, coming to your question, I think we are not necessarily diverging from what is required from us in terms of diversity of service providers that we use. We depend on also the National Treasury. There is a supplier database that is there. We do our own market research, and you would be aware that the engaging service providers in the public service, it must be a competitive process. So that competitive process enables us to ensure that there is enough diversity in the service providers that we use. So it's not something different from any other public service institution out there. I think for now I think lastly on the Public Procurement Act, what I like about it is that it also reminds us that the issue of automating the environment it's very critical and it's very urgent, because all these systems that are not integrated are really creating a problem in terms of efficiency and reporting, in terms of accountability as to how we are spending public money. So there is an intention there to say we must fast track modernization and automation of our systems. And I think if that does not happen when there is an act, it's going to be a problem, because the public out there will be pushing the responsible people like all of us to automate the processes in the public service. It will assist to lower the issue of corruption as well, in my view, because I think some of the issues that of the controls that are brought in by automation are helpful in ensuring that there is some efficient control measures in the system. I would want to leave it there for now. Thank you very much, Kanyiso.
Thank you very much. Just to bring in our last speaker before we get into our questions. So hopefully our attendants, people are there, have your questions. Then just to bring in Tokolo from the city of Johannesburg. With the city of Johannesburg being our focal center with regards to revenue and the GDP, what strategies can businesses adopt to address skills shortages in procurement?
Thank you very much, Kanyiso and the fellow panelists. I've heard that a few of the panelists have actually touched on the issue of skills and the skill sets that are available, in particular in the public sector, specifically within the procurement space. And some of the issues that they were touching on were quite critical, in the sense that they are also embedded in the legacy and the culture that came with the buying regime, as opposed to the supply chain or the procurement regime that came with the promulgation of the acts, the MFMA 2005, and the various different acts that then promoted an integrated procurement process, that is buying processes. And to a large extent, you then find that there is that legacy of officials or practitioners that could have come from an era where things were not so complex and were not so sophisticated. They were very elementary and very basic, and it becomes very difficult to then migrate them and also migrate the mindset out of that era. Because truly speaking, with the various disruptions that come with requirements or procurement requirements, you need an agile procurement team of practitioners. And for you to be able to do that, then you need to have trained them, having put them through certain developmental processes. And how do we go about in our case is that we do have internal interventions that we have. We've got programs that we have. For instance, every opportunity that presents itself to train and empower people, we use it, and we use it through various interventions. For instance, if we review our policy, we make it compulsory that post the policy review, the supplier management policy review, everyone who touches a procurement process, irrespective whether they are in a supply chain management environment or they are actually at the user department environment. But if you ever get involved in the procurement process, then you have to undergo a certain level of training, even if it means specifically to the changes that have been made. But we also do have forums that we run, because we are a big municipality, and we also have the agencies that the ones we call municipal entities, and as such, from time to time we come together in the SCM forums. We exchange ideas, we benchmark against each other. So we use that as also as our form of empowerment and developmental in terms of broadening the skills of the SCM practitioners. over and above that, we do formal training sessions with Palama, or the National School of Government, that is the accredited training institution by the National Treasury to train public procurement practitioners, and we use them quite extensively to develop our staff in terms of bid committees, how to run bid committees, in terms of sourcing strategies, in terms of contract and performance management, the supplier development strategies, and the various processes. So, and they run quite extensive training programs. At any given time, a program runs for at least a week. So you could see the intensity of those programs, and we are sitting quite well. Those are some of the interventions that are available that we use over and above the subsidy education that is provided by the municipality for our employees or practitioners to go to institutions of higher learning. Those that have not had the opportunity to do that, there is that subsidy program that is run by the municipality to allow practitioners to obtain formal education through formal institutions of learning. We also have some informal partnerships with institutions like your SIPs, who specializes in the supply chain and procurement training. So we do have some of our members here who are actually SIPs members, and they are SIPs accredited. A few of them, they actually have attained the SIPs master level. So those are some of the interventions and the strategies that we adopt for development purposes,
Yes.
and training purposes for our practitioners.
Okay, thank you.
Let me leave it there. Let me leave it there for now, and hope that it covers you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me just give a platform to our attendees who might have questions. Then let's take a couple of questions. Anyone who would like to ask a question to our panel members? Are there any questions from our attendees? I'm not sure if they can raise their hands. Yeah. Hello, Lebu, can you maybe assist? Okay, oh, yes, I can see. Matlaza, your hand is up. Patience Matlaza, your hand is up. Are you able to maybe unmute yourself and ask a question? Can our technical team maybe assist us with that? Okay, Mahlatse, your hand is also up. Are you able to just unmute yourself?
Can you so?
Yes?
So our delegates cannot speak, they can only type.
Oh, okay. No problem. Thank you for that. Do you mind maybe just typing your questions down for us? Delegates, I do apologize for that. If you can, just quickly share your questions and comments that you might have for us in the
Hello.
comment section.
Hi,
Hello? Yes?
Hi, my name is Cassius Mahlaza. I'm
Oh.
currently working with Department of Education. I'm in the unit infrastructure. I would like to ask a question, though it was not mentioned during the presentation. I would like to know, in terms of 30% localization of ceding some of the work to SMMEs in the community where you provide maybe construction projects. I wanted to check, what does the Act says about that 30% localization? Thank you.
Thank you. Would any one of the panelists maybe would like to tackle that for us? Matabo, maybe since you have from the legislature, maybe would you like to answer the question? Oh, Tukulu, I see your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. Is it okay if we continue without the video?
Yes, you can just give your answer, and I see Nadia also wanted to say something, and then she can follow after.
Yeah, I think I would like to respond, but also seek clarity whether it's a 30% localization or is he referring to the 30% subcontracting? And I understand that it could cause a bit of confusion, because usually the expectation is that you will subcontract to your local service providers, and in particular within the construction industry. That's mainly where it's deployed. It used to be a provision, a legislative provision, part of the regulations in the 2017 preferential procurement regulations. But since the nullification of those regulations through that protracted case between the minister and the AfriForum, it is no longer part of the revised regulations promulgated in 2022, and as such, it is not a supply chain management regulatory. It does not form part of the regulatory framework. However, there isn't anything that is prohibiting an organ of state in terms of their empowerment objectives to actively seek opportunities to promote SMMEs and businesses within the environments where they operate, and in particular, if it is a project happening within a specific community, the policies should enable organs of state to then empower those communities through the procurement processes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Before I give Nadia the platform, our technical team, is it possible to also allow Mahlatse to unmute herself, if it is possible, just like for Cassius. But in the meantime, Nadia, you can continue.
I think Mr. Salebe answered the question. The 30% was more pertinent to the 2017 regulations. However, the current Act does not have that provision in it at this point in time. We're not sure, maybe in the regulations they may bring, give more guidance on that. But yes, technically there's nothing in law that prevents any subcontracting or arrangement that may be there. But maybe just to take the opportunity as well, so maybe just to give an indication of how the Western Cape actually brings in affirmative action within its own supply chain process. So we operate with a supplier database that we vet and we bring in. And I think Mr. Sadebe also spoke about your different contracting models in construction. So there's 4 different types of contract, which each brings in its own requirements for subcontracting and empowerment. And so it depends on the choices that you make. You can actually leverage in terms of local opportunity and empowerment in that way. But for any other type of contracting also in the Western Cape, we then look at our supply database. And what we have, you will find through direct procurement, 83% of our supplier database constitute SMMEs. And you would find that almost 75% constitutes Black-owned companies. So when we act, and it's compulsory to be able to use our own database to be able to do our procurement process. So by default, if I have to do a tender through our procurement system, which is for tenders up to 1 million, we do a competitive process up to 1 million via an e-procurement system. And at any given time, we have 73% of our database that could potentially get the award that will be a Black-owned company. So there's 73 to 75% chance of that. And similarly, 83 to 85% chance of it being an SMME. So already without actually going into set-asides or pre-qualifications, etc., you can do that. So it all depends on your planning and your mobilization of your policy environment. And so how do you use technology and how do you use planning on positioning your procurement in such a way that it becomes easy to give effect to these policy objectives? The other point that I also want to make is that you need to take the industry with you. So it's very important to engage with the supplier community. And as much as we upskill our staff, and I mean, we've also got very similar to what the previous speakers were talking about, Palama, all of that. But it's also then about having this very concerted effort to equip people to firstly to do what they need to do, but to take your suppliers along in that journey. Because your tender is only as good as how the suppliers respond. So if you're actually looking at an policy environment, you need to mainstream that, not just internally within government, but externally with the suppliers. So you have responsiveness. So for us, we pay a lot of attention to that. And I guess in a way, that also begins to work in terms of, our data that we have for empowerment, etc., through direct procurement. And so anything that we do to subcontracting or whatever else or targeting is an additional bonus, because then you have what we call an empowerment impact assessment. So we do empowerment impact assessments for anything above 10 million. And then you go and target and you say, okay, this is what the industry, the environment, the market has to offer. And then how then can we leverage for a particular commodity to do this thing in a particular way? So it is about how you then do your demand planning and how do you, you need to understand. You need to move from the place of not knowing what you don't know to a place of knowing what's out there. And it's a critical shift in behavior and thinking. Just something that I think we need to work harder at as government.
Thank you for that. There's another question here that is asking, what are the top 3 best practices that can improve public procurement and supply chain management in the public sector? Maybe you can also assist with that, Nkululeko. I see your hand is up.
Okay, thank you very much. No, I wanted to maybe it will partly answer the question. I think it's very important for these transformational imperatives or interventions that government is implementing to be communicated and the community is being brought along. The issue of 30% had created, as you would be aware, it has created havoc in the country. This is one of the reasons behind hijacking of construction sites Because if you go to the communities out there, even in the rural, especially in the rural areas, people just know that if someone is working there, they are entitled to 30%. As to what it means, where it comes from, how it should be implemented, they are not bothered by that. But so what I'm trying to say is that it's important to bring. I think Nadia did allude to bringing the companies into the picture, but I think we should even extend it to the communities themselves, because I think there's even an understanding from other people that even if you don't have a company, if you can group yourselves as a community, as some grouping in the community, you would be entitled to a 30% of a construction tender that has been awarded. So I think my input on this one is that if we are to say, as this municipality or as this government institution, this is what our targets for social goals or transformation. This must be communicated very clearly into the potential service bidders and the community at large. I wanted to just address that question just from that angle. I hope other colleagues can come in. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Andres, Mahlatsi, if possible, can you just write your question in the question and answer section, if you don't mind? That would be very helpful. Yes, Andres?
I'm not gonna attempt the top 3. I'm gonna attempt the top 1. So we very much talk about empowerment and so forth. I think the other term that we need to start strongly using is sustainability, and that it's not just about awarding contracts to the right people, but it's actually creating sustainable businesses. So there's the example mentioned of a particular business that's dependent on the department it works for the entity it works for. That's a very dangerous and in my view, unsustainable situation where we possibly need to look at policy as well. Is that we must be very careful, and again, the statement I'm about to make is not even just public sector, it is actually private sectors as critical. I've worked quite a long time for Telkom, and what these big corporates tend to do is they tend to give a substantial contract to a service provider who's established. I mean, you don't win contracts in government if you don't have a track record. It's not like you can just tomorrow decide you're going to get a multi-million rand contract and get it. There will be definitely some funny shortcuts that was taken if that was the case. But at the end of the day, the sustainability of contracts means there must be a balance between the, let's call it, alternative customers of a supplier and its relationship with the given procurement organization or government department. And on the flip side, we can't go around awarding 1-year or 3-year contracts and think we're actually creating sustainable businesses. It's actually incredibly destructive practice, because what happens, those organizations would hire their staff on contract and they would terminate their staff's contracts once the contract runs out. It's quite bad in the security industry, the cleaning industry already. And what we need to look at is alternative contract models that looks at longer term. Now, immediately the government officials is gonna remind me, but Andres, you're not allowed to contract for an amount more than what you have budget for, and we only have, roughly speaking, 3 years visibility of our budget through the MTF. My answer to that is, again, the answer lies in your contract model. And I believe we can award 10-year contracts, but you don't need to commit for 10 years, meaning it could be a 10-year contract that requires certain hurdles to be cleared. And that hurdles could be empowerment hurdles. That hurdles could be that your organization appoint people, that the supplier appoint the people permanently. It demands that the supplier at least have 50% of its business comes from a environment other than the state. So you're almost forcing the supplier to grow, because if he doesn't maintain the 50% when he gets your government contract, then we will declare him as not sustainable and not necessarily give him the long-term version. But and then at the same time, people are willing to invest in long-term contracts. So if I awarded a contract that potentially, and we all like the term local economic development, where we're trying to move businesses into our provinces or grow the businesses in our jurisdictions. And again, sometimes the skills is just not in your region. It's not in your town. It's everybody's in Cape Town, Durban, and Joburg. And us rural provinces, we just don't have those guys with the big yellow fleets or the big infrastructure to actually service our school infrastructure, service our medical infrastructure. And again, the trick is award contracts. Don't be regional when you award contracts. Be regional when you put the terms for extension and renewal. And so through some creative contracting models, we can actually come up with models that is not just empowering, but it's actually sustainable empowering. And it doesn't create billionaires overnight and then they go bankrupt when the contract comes to an end and all the staff gets retrenched. On that level, I also want to offer, and I'll send you the document. I have written a kind of a white paper on the whole topic of selecting your contract period, and I'm more than happy to share it with whomever is interested in studying it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And that would be helpful also with regards to our institution. Let me just bring in Odisa here. I see your hand is up.
Thanks, Kanye. So I just wanted to add some few points as well to what Andrews have just shared. When he was just speaking about true empowerment, I think one of the gaps that we've picked up is that yes, empowerment goes beyond awarding ones of contracts. And one of the things that we really need to look at is that there must be a constant flow of projects to the market. And this goes back to our processes taking longer just to go to the market and also processing the inquiries. So that is one of the areas whereby we really need to be more efficient to make sure that for those businesses to be able to sustain themselves, there is constant flow of projects to the market. And then secondly, even during the contract execution, because of our processes as well, we find ourselves that we take too long actually to pay our suppliers and we kill them. And when it comes to that constant cash flow, and then lastly, in terms of our supplier development programs, we're now going beyond actually only incubating our suppliers for the technical skills. We are adding the business management side of things to make sure that they also do manage their finances as well as are being more actually aggressive when it comes to their marketing strategies. I just wanted to add to those few points. Thanks.
Thank you. And speaking about the late payments, Colette, are you still with us? Can you just elaborate with us? How do you then, as private companies, deal with the challenges of late payment and credit risks in South Africa?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. The starting point here is that most of the issues of late payments are internally driven. And I'll say this because the experience that I have is that if one does not educate the end users what to do when they receive the goods, they sit with the invoice. Nobody gets receipt, they consume, and the supplier doesn't get paid. Up until the supplier picks up the phone and phones the buyer and says, hey, guys, I've delivered. and now I don't know what to do. So we've taken a serious effort to educate our end users because that is very critical. And to manage a supplier's cash flow could also kill them. And I think I've seen a few in my current environment struggle, even previously in where I was then. So where we are at the moment, we are managing it in that way. However, the other thing is on the contracting strategy that we are talking about. The issue of doing spot POs at the moment, that's what creates all the issues of late receipting and not receipting at all, and then a person has left and they've consumed the goods, etc. The other thing there is that if you've got a contract strategy that is proper and you've trained your people, and every time your suppliers deliver, the person that was receiving contractually, is able to receipt. Also, we have systems right now and tools that we are using. We have a tool currently, SAP Ariba, where even a supplier that has delivered is able to track where the payment process is.
Yes.
The payment process is. Obviously, it starts with, let's start here. We've got different types of, we've got the SMMEs, right, from the EMEs and the QSEs that one would need to look at the payment terms. If I'm dealing with a big company that's on 60 days, an SMME or a local that's nearby in Zagane cannot stand 60 days. 60 days is too long for them. So we've segregated that to say for EMEs and QSEs, this is the standard that we're going to apply for them. And that standard then gets derogated. So which means there's a certain deviation that we have to fill in as procurement and then support it so that finance knows and the system is changed, because they don't have the luxury of the system where they could do the separabas and track, etc., like any other supplier. So we're looking we've looked at segregating that. So on an annual basis, then my supply development onboarding guy would then collect the BE certificates and we review the system. And sometimes they do, as systems are not 100% foolproof. Sometimes they would fall off on the 60 days and no one would know at that time. And then you'd get a call from the supplier. But what's important is educate them on the system, sort your internal issues out, educate even your internal stakeholders, especially the end users, because most of the problems we have as supplier management are really internal.
Yes.
More than they are external. Yes.
Thank you for that. Matsepo, would you like to add?
Yes, I think Glad is spot on in terms of internal challenges with regards to invoicing. And I know that we can pay within a limited period. I think the laxity, whether it's the correct word or not, I'm not so sure, with which the processes are being done, it's creating a bit of a challenge. Like Colette was indicating, not everybody would have a system to assist the suppliers. But I think one of the measures or internal control measures that institutions or organizations could deploy is to centralize the receipt of invoices. In that manner, it gets to be controlled from a centralized point, be it in SEM or in finance, where you have payment officers or accountants dealing with that centralized portal where invoices gets to be attached, and then there is a timeline given to management or line managers to respond to those invoices. It is true that because they are relaxed financial management, consequence management that is being applied, people do sit with invoices, and then the buyers are the ones that are struggling with attending to supplier queries or even insults as well. So there is a lot that we can do as government in terms of improving on this, including where possible, where the Ariba, your SEP Ariba could be, those that are using SEP for HENA will also be able to benefit from those issues. So what I've seen happening for those that are not well let's say, funded to have such equipment. It's the centralized version of a system that can be introduced internally to deal with those issues. Thanks.
Thank you. Colette, do you want us to add something? I see your hand is stood up.
Yeah, I think from what my colleague was talking about now, the centralization, I think it's possible, but it needs to be done in a certain way. For an example, you would find that you've got HR suppliers and you can't centralize it at the warehouse because of the things that they are receiving. And there are many risks that you find with centralization. But I think when it comes to the centralization can be done maybe from an operations perspective, that for all operations, and then it helps in that way. But the biggest, it has its own risks, but it can be done, but it has its own serious risks. And you could then end up with other irregularities. There's a person in my family that works for a certain organization, and I'm just giving this example. She was asked to receipt, and she's been receipting things she doesn't even know because they've centralized it. And they would the warehouse would just bring receipt. So there are certain dangers there that are not intended by the organization when they do that. But yeah, that's just what I wanted to add. But also there was that question of where we talked about the top three, and we already spoken about sustainability of suppliers. I think we can underscore or understate the issue of planning from organization. And while we understate that, it is killing, including the development that we want to do, including the empowerment that we want to do. And having said that, I am also passionate about, if you look at South SA Inc., there are so many things that we could collaborate on and get the economy going and get the issue of sustainable development going. I referred in my opening statement for about sole suppliers that are supplying gas at the moment. And yes, they are currently supplying Gibela only. And that's because an international supplier left Bahrain and came to South Africa and decided, you know what, I'm going to localize. However, I'm proud to say those suppliers, for the past 2 weeks, they were in Berlin, putting themselves out there. They are trying to set up. So unfortunately, it's certain things you can do, but you're going to need even those people that are taking whatever that they're doing to take it on. Manufacturing is not easy. It's not for the faint-hearted. Because if you look at where the economy is at the moment, there's not a lot of manufacturing taking place, but there's a lot of maintenance that is taking place. So even with the intentional development that we are doing, one should also focus on whoever I'm developing that is supplying something that I'm buying. I also, from a sustainability perspective, need to look at what aftermarket can they do for me while they're trying to find themselves and build themselves up. So I think there's a lot that we can do. For me, I think the other best practice that we should look at across, one is collaboration. And that collaboration would be influenced by planning. Because we buy the same thing. All of us are buying steel. All of us are buying fabrication. And yet we are not talking. I'm now talking as government. We are not talking. And if we were, this economy that we so love would be fun. Thank you.
I love your sentiments of unity in South Africa and collaboration. I think that's a conversation we need to start having. Yes, Andres, I see your hand is up.
Yes, I think since we're sort of discussing the top 3 best practices, I also want to throw in my 2 cents when it comes to the whole payment issue. I do believe it speaks to the sustainability argument again, but yes, there's another angle to this, and it is not supply chain management that's actually the solution. It is, let's call it and I have to now pick my words carefully because I'm a treasury official. So we work with departments and we understand their financial positions. But I do believe the country is currently in a very tight position. Our payrolls are chowing our goods and services budgets. The government situation in its current format is actually, in a manner of speaking, also not sustainable. And unfortunately and fortunately, I think there's a positive and a negative here. We have to become more lean as government, and it does mean that we probably have to look at our human resources. We probably have to automate more, probably have to have more systems with a view to have less overheads and more money available for service delivery. Because if you look at what service delivery is, with the exception of Department of Education, where service delivery is indeed a teacher in front of a class, in many departments, service delivery is goods and services. And if our payrolls are eating up our goods and services budget, it actually becomes a threat to the entire supply chain system and its intent to empower the economy and grow the economy. So a more efficient system is over the long term going to create more job opportunities than trying to keep things manual and keep government officials employed. And I'm one myself. But we really need to rethink our economic growth model. I do agree that infrastructure investment is still the best economic plan when it comes to government, but having 1 million government officials, that argument is a bit dangerous because it's not sustainable. If your tax base aren't growing, you can't grow your staff complement. So it's a bit off the topic of supply chain, but it represents a risk to supply chain that our organizations are becoming more labor intensive, where it's supposed to be becoming less labor intensive through the technologies we adopt and centralization, all the other good points made. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We have a few minutes left. I would just like to bring in a few questions that we have from our question and answer platform. The first one, maybe I could bring you David. David, if you're still with us, it says, what's your take on whether political interference affects professionalism and ethics in the public sector procurement and supply chain management system? And I ask you this because Eastern Cape is one of the most provinces that has tight influence with politics and businesses. Are you still with us, David?
Oh, yes, I'm there. Yes. Thank you for the question. I actually looked at it and I'll respond to this in two ways. Look, there is a legislation that is out there. And one of the reasons why supply chain is highly regulated is to try and insulate it from any interference from anyone. And specifically with politicians, it's very clear. In the local government space, we talk about the councillors that are bred or apart from are participating in the procurement space. But does it? Okay, certainly does. Okay. And who's the responsibility to manage that? It's us professionals. So it is up to you as an individual to push back on that, and pushing back in a manner that is educational to even your principal or the politician that is trying to interfere. So I'm saying that the ball remains in the court of the professional to make sure that they abide by the ethics that are there, and ensuring that they stick by the book, and yet educating those politicians and trying to draw the line in the supply chain space. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we'll take maybe the last question, maybe if we can. But Matsepo, if you're still with us, there's also a question here that says that why does supply chain always take time? The question says, as educators, we are invited by the Department of Education for a workshop on a certain hotel, but unfortunately on arrival, we can't check in because supply chain has not done its job. Why do we find ourselves in such instances? Hello, Matebo?
Yes, Kanye. Yes, it does happen. In some cases, you find that travel agencies that we use would have then confirmed that the bookings has been made. However, when you get to the hotel, the vouchers have not been submitted for consolidation. So it's also a bit of a challenge in especially where you're using a number of travel agencies or you don't have a travel desk, your buyers, depending on the structures of the institution that are dealing with the travel and accommodation. I must say, it's not a daily occurrence. However, the organizers of the event as well might be at fault and not necessarily SCM. Because in some cases, people raise matters or request late, and therefore, as we are dealing with the processes, you find that in some cases, if venues or bookings have to be maybe processed and finalized while the clients are at on site. It's not a nice thing, but that does happen. And I think we need to look at planning, which is also a bit of a challenge when it comes. I think I can't remember who said, was it Andres who said, we always thought of last. So everybody else complied to their own requirements, but when it comes to supply chain management or procurement, we have to bend backwards for us to be able to assist our clients. And I think that's something that it's creating a bit of a disjuncture between the clients that we serve and the service standards that we need to uphold as procurement practitioners. Thank you.
Thank you. Ukulego, before I also allow you to continue, I see there are a couple of hands and you only have 5 minutes. But can you also kindly answer the last question, where is it possible to digitalize the capturing of tenders so that bidders can track where the processes is at and avoid through stacks of documents? And I'm sure maybe this is something that internationally is being used as well. So can you just kind of give us your input on that one while you were also answering the previous question?
No, thank you very much. I think a short answer to the second question is that the tools are out there. I'm sure the colleagues who are on the platform are quite would have more knowledge on the tools that are out there in terms of automation and integrative systems that are out there. So I'll just leave that there because I mean, technology is there. It's been proven in various institutions and environment in both public and private sector that can be leveraged on. I wanted to make a comment on this thing about delays in procurement. It's something that we take very lightly. That usually procurement it has got a lot of dependencies. The process dependencies on the end user, dependencies on that business unit that you are dealing with, in terms of planning. Because the planning is not only done, procurement doing it separately from the end user, and also the involvement of the end user in the process is critical in terms of the committees that are involved, in terms of developing specifications, in all the steps in procurement. So, and the appreciation of the importance of their involvement, they sometimes don't understand it more than the procurement practitioners themselves. So I think that's the challenge that we face on a daily basis to impress upon the colleagues, even project managers who are dealing with serious projects. The planning part, it's usually not their strong point to help to assist that we finalize the processes as soon as we can. So I think that is one of the issues that we really need to work very hard as practitioners to convince other people who are involved in the process to appreciate what it means to meet the timeframes, and the deadlines. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Andres? Is it a legacy hand? Andres,
Yeah,
or it's a new one?
just a quick one. And I wasn't the speaker that mentioned supply chain is thought of last, but it is a very good point made. And I just want to leave the colleagues with this concept is something the current regulations or prescript says your procurement plan must be ready by the start of a given financial year, which I always say you're 9 months late. The procurement plan, we've successfully done it, and it's now starting to give us some positive inputs. The procurement plan must be a supporting document to your budget submission. So the Eastern Cape Provincial Treasury demands a procurement plan as part of its annual budget process, so that the departments can prove to us they will actually spend the money that they're asking for by showing us evidence that they've already planned how to spend it. So that is for any government organization a great tip of how you can actually align your processes, that your supply chain process can be more proactive, and that you can actually start chasing the end user saying, you owe me a specification, you promise you will deliver it to me by the 1st of April or the 1st of March or whenever during the year, and you haven't given to me. So theoretically, you're not going to spend that money. So just take that as a bit of advice as well. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And Andres, please kindly do share the document. And thank you, Nadia, for answering the questions in the comment section. Maybe the last question, just for ESCOM, looking at the weather this last few weeks, how prepared are you for supply chain disruptions in this coming few months? Hello, Kodisa.
Hi, yeah, that's a very, very tricky question. We are prepared, and I mean, unless something really do go wrong. And I mean, if you will see that we had a zero load shedding, a winter plan, which was very successful. And going forward, actually to summer, we are not anticipating actually any disruption. However, even from our supply chain support side of things, which really our key challenge was mainly around the availability of spares. I think from the business point of view, we are ready actually to service the country. So we're not anticipating any major challenges. If it happens, it will be minimal. But at this point, I think the outlook is looking very positive. Thanks.
Thank you. And same applies to you, colleague. We're looking at our railway developments. I mean, there has been some improvements, I know, since COVID happened. We are going back to having a few trains back into the railway systems. But if for any examples, any hectic weather conditions do come up, are you guys prepared?
We are more than prepared. We've got sufficient trains anyway for anything that may happen. I think what we could say is that we're waiting for, I think today PRASA said that they are mobilizing public partnership to support it with the infrastructure. And in fact, even Gautrain, they were talking to building a speed train between different provinces in our country. I think we're not only preparing for just the severe weather, but we're preparing to ensure that most of our people have their monies back. Because if you see, there's more money that they're spending in taxes where they could be spending in trains. So yes, we are prepared to work with PRASA, to work with the public, and yes, we're ready.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, Nadia, as a province, are you prepared with regards to agriculture? I know there were so many farmers who were very, very disappointed with what has been happening with the extreme weathers. A lot of vegetation was lost and so on. So are you prepared as the Western Cape?
One could never be too prepared, just to note, in disaster conditions. But I think there is a concerted effort, like we do for energy. For energy, I mean, there's a big support from ESCOM, but also the move to be off grid. Similarly, with the severe weather conditions, there's a concerted effort, not just by agriculture itself, but there's a integrated management approach through our Department of Mobility, through our Department of Infrastructure, in terms of how you then mobilize within a disaster. And then not forgetting our Disaster Management Center that then begins to engage in that. So they are looking at, agricultural, sustainable methods of actually looking at, curtailing damage to crops, etc., but also then how do they, provide sustainable remedies for support to farmers, etc. So you have to work with it on a twofold, because sometimes the devastation is quick and there's a quick onslaught, and no matter what you do, you cannot safeguard against what's going to happen. So you then need to buffer that. So I think our Department of Agriculture has got a lot of, they've put in a lot of effort to do that. But as I say, when you're at the behest of Mother Nature, no human being can prevent that. You have the wrath of God. So, so I guess we're as prepared as we can be, but anything can happen in the process. And I mean, we're experiencing extreme weather conditions in the Western Cape. Like recently, it was extremely cold. Today, it's absolutely hot. So it's like really, really extreme conditions. I mean, KZN, you saw the other day, it was snowing in places where it hadn't snowed even before. So it's you never can expect. I mean, although climate change, I think, without just going into agriculture itself, I think we're now starting to look at the whole aspects around climate change and what they could bring, because you have the drought was a slow onslaught disaster that quickly brought on the very quick onslaught conditions, like extreme rain conditions, flooding, mudslides, and all of that. And if you actually look at the geographical landscape, it will tell you that once you have a drought, those other things become imminent. And we've been getting those warning bells a long time in government. I think we haven't paid heed to them as we should. Now we're forced to do that. And so I think Andres also touched about money and the fiscus. So that also begins to constrain you even within your procurement process. You're limited in terms of what you can really do. And so it's important then to mobilize with partnerships with colleagues. So in the Western Cape, we leverage off the local government, disaster management centers or municipalities, etc., partnering with agriculture, but also in terms of the national departments that have a footprint in the province. So there's a tripartite kind of mobilization to respond to any disaster that we have.
Okay.
So it works, but it comes with its side issues as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much to our panelists. It's already 5. I know this discussion would have dragged long, and it would have been more fruitful if we had everyone at Regenesis and we were able to have a discussion with everyone face to face. But I'm very, very grateful that you guys took some time from your days to come and engage with us with public procurement, supply chain management. I know I learned a few things as well. I hope most of our attendees as well were able to learn from you guys. And also we are hopeful going forward from what you have elaborated with us. Number one, with regards to the Procurement Act, not a bill anymore, the Act. We've heard a few positives and we've had a few scary things about it, but also we are hopeful with regards to what we're hearing with regards to PRASA, with regards to procurement systems in the city of Johannesburg, most importantly, ESCOM as well. With with regards to Western Cape, I know the festive season is coming up as well. Tourism would be one of the things that people are looking into, agriculture, food, and all of that. Thank you also to our attendees who were able to ask any questions to our panelists, and I'm hoping that this is a relationship going forward. This is a relationship that we'll have as we Genesis with all of you panelists, as well with everyone who attended. If there's nothing else from you guys, thank you very much, and I wish you a blessed day going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you very much for the
you.
opportunity.
Stay well. Appreciate it. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye. Yeah. Perfect.